What up, YouTube? Judges Mate back at y'all with another video. In today's video, we'll be looking at the top 10 best wins in UFC history and ranking them by the quality of the opponent, the strength of the performance, and how stylistically favorable or unfavorable the matchup was at that period of time. Let's get into some honorable mentions. First off, Jose Aldo versus Max Holloway. Both fights, the first and second, they both took place when Jose Aldo was around 31 years of age, so Jose was still at the end of his prime, and the fights basically went the exact same way. Holloway pressured him and got a third round TKO in both of the fights. They went similar. You could say the first one was better because it happened earlier, or you could say the second one was better because Aldo knew and expected the exact same thing as the first fight, and it happened the same way. Both of these performances from Holloway were very, very good. Next up, DJ versus Cejudo, the second fight. Henry Cejudo being able to beat Demetrius Johnson in his prime is absolutely incredible and a great win. It was a close fight, super competitive. DJ probably went too heavy on the low kicks and should have mixed it up more. But regardless, Cejudo was able to beat a prime DJ, which does count for a lot. Next up, Cruz versus Garbrandt. Now, a few years ago, this would be considered one of the best wins, but Cruz hasn't really held up as being one of the best bantamweights of all time. Recently, Merab, Petr Yan, Aljamain Sterling, these guys have overtaken him for bantamweight GOAT status, and it's just not as impressive. As well as the performance, it was good, but it was 3 rounds to 2 with a 10-8 in there, so it wasn't as crazy as people make it up to be, but it's still a great win. Next up, Merab versus Petr Yan 1. Now, the thing about this fight was, until recently, it was certified to be a top 5 win. Merab completely destroying, rendering Petr Yan's offense useless, but as we saw by the second fight, Petr Yan was pretty clearly compromised in this one, which makes it less impressive. It bumps it down to an honorable mention. Petr Yan wasn't 100% going in this fight, and it's pretty clear, but it's still an incredible win. And next up, the last honorable mention, Jon Jones versus Daniel Cormier. Both the first and second fight, these would both be on here, but Jones had high test in the first fight and tested positive for estrogen blockers, I believe, in the second fight, so they can't really be on here, even though they are incredible wins. Beating DC twice in DC's prime is pretty crazy. The second time he finished him, that would be easily a top 5, getting a head kick knockout over someone the caliber of DC, but Jones did test positive. So let's get into it. The top 10 best wins in UFC history, starting things off with Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski 1. Now, a lot of people would have this fight higher up, but the thing about this fight is there's a lot going against Volk in this matchup. Firstly, he's 6 inches shorter. He's weighs in about 25 pounds less at a natural weight than Islam. Islam's a natural 170, Volk's a natural 145. Well, not natural, but they fit in those weight classes pretty clearly. And Islam won this fight by laying on Volk in that 4th round. That was probably the sway round. I think most people had it 3-2 Islam. I know some people like to say it's 4-1 Islam. That's fucking bullshit. I mean, maybe it is, but Islam won this fight and won moments of this fight by laying on Volk, holding him in stagnant positions, holding his back, not doing anything. And it's just it's not hyper impressive. The caliber is super impressive. Like, Volkanovski in his prime is a top 5 fighter of all time. Getting a win over that is crazy. This is the highest skilled matchup of all time, in my opinion. So it has to be on here, but it's number 10 because it was a close decision. Makhachev, with a big build advantage, didn't really do much. He got the knockout in the second fight, but Volk was extremely compromised. So I think it sits at the 10. At number 9, Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier. The first fight, DC moving up to heavyweight and knocking out Stipe in the first round. I think it's top 10. The second and third fight, Stipe got his get back, but this was both men in their primes. DC knocked him out. Sure, there was eye pokes, and I think there were 3 eye pokes in the first round, which is dirty from DC, but regardless, he was able to knock out the greatest, most accomplished heavyweight of all time inside a round, which is fucking crazy impressive by today's standards. And DC, a wrestler, doing that. He has good, dirty boxing, but still, a wrestler going in there, knocking Stipe out in the first round, super, super impressive. And it's number 9, not much else to say. Moving on to number 8, Eddie Alvarez versus Conor McGregor. McGregor going in there, being the first man to become a simultaneous 2-division champion. And Alvarez, he's not one of these all-time wins like Volk and Stipe were, but the performance from McGregor, going in there, upper weight class, and having, in my opinion, the most clean title performance of all time. Getting the second round knockout, he scored 3 knockdowns in the first round, and they were just levels shown. Eddie Alvarez knocked out Rafael dos Anjos to become lightweight champion in 1 round. That's impressive. He was champion in the division with Khabib, Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier. And for McGregor to go in there and absolutely decimate him, look on a completely different level to him, just shows how good McGregor was during this time. And it's not the only time it will appear on this list, as we'll see later, but it's sitting at the number 8. At the number 7, Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. This win is underrated. Oliveira, we seen, came back against a top contender in Gamrot and made him look silly. So Oliveira's in his prime, and for Ilia Topuria to go out there and knock him out in half a round is insanely impressive. And Ilia Topuria is, in my opinion, the top 5 fighter of all time, and you'll see because of his appearances on this list, which we'll get to in a bit. But Oliveira still somewhat in his prime, still at a super high level, one of the best fighters in the world. I think Oliveira deserves to be on the pound for pound top 15. He's someone that is still at that championship level, and Topuria went in there and completely destroyed him, rendered the grappling useless, and knocked him out in 2.5 minutes, which I think deserves to be at the number 7. At the number 6, Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. It was not as impressive, but it was closer to Oliveira's prime. Oliveira on an 11-fight win streak. Islam being able to knock down and submit Oliveira in the second round. Super impressive stuff. And I think this win is slightly overrated. I think people do forget it was competitive leading up to the knockdown. People used terminology, and I know I use it as well, of Islam went in there and destroyed Oliveira. It was competitive leading to the finish, but Islam being able to finish Oliveira in his prime inside of 10 minutes is very impressive. I don't think it quite makes the top 5, but certainly top 10. I have it at the 6. Moving into the top 5, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. This matchup, I thought Holloway was going to go in there and win. I thought he was going to be able to stay elusive, stay on the outside, use his footwork and his cardio to win the fight. But Ilia Topuria, another time he's appeared on this list, and he'll appear again. But to knock out Max Holloway, being the first man to do it in UFC history, is utterly insane. He's unquestionable. Max Holloway's a top 10 fighter of all time. And the thing about this performance which makes it a bit less impressive, very similar to his win over Volkanovski, Holloway was coming down from 55 back down to 45, compromising him a bit with the weight, making him cut weight. But ultimately, I don't think it matters too much. And if these guys were to fight again at 55, I think it would be similar. I think there's more that Topuria can improve on than Holloway. In terms of the footwork, I feel like he'll be able to track him down. And maybe Holloway's he does improve in the footwork. He doesn't get cut off like he did in the knockout sequence. But I just don't think that's plausible. I think Ilia's too strong at 55 if they were to fight again. And I think the result would be the exact same. But I think it's a top 5 win in UFC history. How could it not be? very similarly to this, Ilia Topuria versus Alexander Volkanovski. Ilia Topuria is the only one that can claim that he knocked out Volkanovski on full camp. And it's true, he came in at UFC 298 and he knocked out Volk. And people say this and that about Volk only had 3 months, he was 3-month turnaround. He was coming off a knockout to Islam Makhachev. And while I think that does have a claim, and him also going down from 55 to 45, I think Ilia Topuria knocking out Volk is crazy. And I go to number 4. It's definitely top 5. It could be higher. I think if this fight were to happen, both men in their primes, I think it would end a very similar way. Maybe Volk does go in there and pops the jab out a bit more, but I think he will get hunted down. I think Topuria would find the chin of Volk. His power is too much, and I think it's a wrap. Coming in at the number 3, Jose Aldo versus Conor McGregor. McGregor chinning Jose Aldo in 13 seconds. And what's interesting about this fight is the sequences that McGregor spoke about leading into it were there for the picking. Aldo coming in isn't a very defensive striker, especially moving forward, and McGregor just found the chin and knocked him out inside of 13 seconds. If they were to rematch, I'm sure it would probably be a first round knockout if Aldo wants to get any offense in. Aldo doesn't have the best cardio in the world, doesn't have the best grappling, so he wouldn't be able to change it. And any way you spin it, I think McGregor does win this fight. It is stylistically favorable, I will say that, which does nerf it a bit. But going out there and knocking out the best fighter in the world, the number 1 pound for pound guy in the world, Jose Aldo, in 13 seconds, is fucking crazy. It would never happen before, it'll never happen again. Like, imagine fucking Ian Gary going out there and knocking out Islam Makhachev in 13 seconds. It's just not going to happen. Imagine Big Rufus head kicking Ilia Topuria inside of 13 seconds. It's just never going to happen. And a second appearance from McGregor on the list. Hyper impressive. Moving on, a recent addition to the list. Merab Dvalishvili versus Petr Yan in the rematch. At a 50-45 for Petr Yan. Some people said it was 48-47. Fuck that. Petr Yan won those first 2 rounds. They were close, but Merab didn't land anything meaningful. The strike counts in this fight were bullshit. Merab landed mostly on the guard, and the punches he did land, he doesn't hit particularly hard. Petr Yan landed effective shots, and while the numbers on the strikes look similar, the wrestling didn't. Petr Yan took him down about 5 times. Merab took him down twice, but shot like 25 takedowns. And ultimately a masterclass from Petr Yan. Merab in his prime, a top 3 pound for pound fighter in the modern day. And Petr Yan took him to school. Complete offensive masterclass. And in a trilogy fight, I see it going the exact same way. Ultra impressive from Petr Yan. Proved that he is one of the most skilled fighters of all time, and he was able to apply the skill in this matchup. And Merab is insanely tough, insanely durable, has insane cardio, which allowed him to get through it. But the body shot in round 3 that he landed, I think the takedown wasn't in round 3 where he dumped him on his head or on his shoulder, but the visuals of it were crazy. There was a body kick in round 5 as well, but ultimately Merab's face, he looked like a fucking goblin after this fight. And Petr Yan put the work in, and I think it's the second best win of all time. Now, for the number 1 spot, the greatest win in MMA history, Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway 3. We knew it was going to be up here. And the thing about this fight, Max Holloway had fights against Yair Rodriguez, one of the best pure strikers in the history of the sport, and Calvin Kattar, where he set a strike record. He was able to go through those first 2 fights. The first one, where he lost. The second one, he was so close to winning, and he was able to have time to readjust. And he still got 50-45 by Volk. He got 50-45. Max Holloway is the best pure volume striker in the history of the sport. He holds the most significant strikes by 50% over second place. He has like 3 of the 5 most significant strikes in fights in history. He holds 3. He holds the first 2 against Calvin Kattar and Brian Ortega. This guy outstrikes fucking everybody. And for Volkanovski, who doesn't have insane power, Holloway has an iron chin. He didn't knock him out. He didn't take him down. He outschooled him. Holloway was shooting takedowns on Volk in that 5th round. And Volkanovski went out there and outstruck Max Holloway, both men in their primes. 5 rounds to none is fucking crazy. He left, and you could say maybe in the first, or was it the 2nd round, Volk landed an elbow that caused the cut. You could say that was unlucky, but I think the fight was going to go that exact same way all 5 rounds. Volk wasn't going to slow down. Holloway wasn't going to slow down. And Volk is just too quick. As he was saying in the fight, he's just too fast for you. And that's what Holloway found out. Holloway being a top 10 fighter of all time in his absolute prime, in a stylistically somewhat, I guess you could say, favorable matchup. And Volk proved how good he was. He didn't need to shoot. He didn't need to get a knockout. He could sit there for 25 minutes and outstrike Max Holloway in his prime like a fucking G. And that's what makes it, in my opinion, the most impressive win in the history of the sport. And yeah, that's the video. I hope you guys like it. I think it is interesting to look back and see the most impressive victories in the history of the UFC. And I think Volk sits on top of that mountain. I think there are a lot of wins. I think that my opinion on Islam Makhachev versus Volkanovski is unpopular just because it is probably unanimously the most skilled matchup in the history of the sport. But I think it just was too close. I think Petr Yan's win over Merab was super impressive. And I think McGregor's performances in championship fights have held up over the past 10 years. But that was my top 10. If you guys have any suggestions, what should be on here, what should be some more mentions, make sure to like, subscribe, do all that shit, and I'll catch y'all in a bit.